All right, I think we're ready to get going here. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining today's webcast on modernizing and enhancing your BizTalk solutions for 2017. My name is Stan Kennedy. I am the Integration Practice Director, work for Talon. Talon, just a quick plug here on Talon and our BizTalk practice. So at Talon, we provide professional services, solutions, and products. We focus around various practice areas, including cloud, SharePoint, mobile, BI, cognitive services, and last but certainly not least, BizTalk. So I'm super excited to present this to you guys today. A little bit about the practice, the integration practice. We've been doing BizTalk almost since the beginning. We have a dedicated BizTalk team staffed here at Talon, and we're super excited to bring some of our perspectives and insight to maybe help make your world a little bit easier in the integration space. Okay. So what I'd like to focus this webcast on is really around the challenges around integration. And you know, BizTalk is a very tried and true application platform for integration. It's been around for many years, many versions, and I think that's really been resonating very well with CIOs and CTOs, that BizTalk really hasn't gone under the knife, so to speak, in the many years. So we know what it can do, we know what it can't do, and there are typically no surprises around that. Really, the purpose of this webcast is to give you our perspective, maybe some insight based on hundreds of projects that we've been doing over the years, many hundreds of clients, and maybe make your life a little bit easier in the BizTalk space. So I really rolled the different challenges under three areas. The first one is specialized skill sets, resources, and limited support. And this really just means that, you know, let's face it, BizTalk resources are very hard to come by. If you're trying to recruit one, there's just not a lot out there. It's not like a SharePoint or SQL or BI guy. They're very hard to come by. So typically growing your own is typically the way, and we've been very successful with that, and we've helped our clients do that as well. So certainly a challenge. The BizTalk platform is very wide, it's very deep, and it can take years to really ramp up in all the different areas. So we're going to discuss some of the ways that you can solve this problem. And hopefully by the end of this webinar and webcast, you'll have a little bit more insight in how we do that. The next area is around modernizing your integration requirements, and this is really around, with the rise of Internet of Things, the challenges around mobile development in terms of API-led integrations, and we're in a whole different world now of integration, and integration can be the backbone for modernized integration patterns. I'm going to talk about some of those new integration patterns, some that's on Azure, some that's on BizTalk, and a little bit in between. So hopefully this will give you some insight in those different areas. And then finally, we're going to talk about platform gaps. There's certainly some things that the platform is missing. You know, Microsoft leverages some of its partners to sort of fill in those gaps. While I think, you know, a lot of them do a pretty good job, there's some other areas that the platform is just, you know, it's very hard to manage. So I'm going to identify some of those gaps that we've seen, and then I'm going to help you and provide you with some of the tools and applications that may help you around this. So here's what I'd like to cover in this webcast that's really going to pivot around those challenges that we're sort of going to frame up. How do we attack those? The first one is we're going to talk about modernizing a hybrid integration platform. The second one, we're going to talk about some of the add-ons, the tools, and the frameworks that are available to you that's going to make your BizTalk experience a lot better. We're going to talk about some of the Talon's BizTalk offerings and how we've been helping clients to improve that BizTalk experience. Obviously, BizTalk Server 2016 was recently released. We want to talk about that and how that's going to play into the integration scenario and what the future lies for BizTalk as well. And then finally, we want to talk a little bit about more of the Azure, the service bus areas. This is super exciting. We've been doing these and this has been getting more traction with some of our clients. This really opens up some doors and some gateways, if you will, for implementing some of those modern technologies. So I'm pretty excited about this area. Okay, so let's dive right into the first area, Modernize hybrid platform. So from Microsoft's perspective, when we talk about a hybrid integration platform, today when we talk about integration, it's typically centered around BizTalk Server. BizTalk Server, as most of you on this call is probably already aware, is leveraged on-premise or either infrastructure as a service, but it's more, I call it the sledgehammer platform of integration. It can do a lot of things and it can do it very well. It integrates in an EAI pattern scenario, ESB, typically in a hub spoke. Where we're seeing the next sort of logical area progression is logic apps. This is platform as a service. You just manage the application. And so we'll talk more about this, but this is really the cloud version of BizTalk, if you will. There's some other things that we can leverage that Microsoft has released and is super exciting, API management, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and how that's actually used in integration, as well as Azure Service Bus. And all these really center around Azure services. Service Bus is a part of that, API management is a part of that, and then obviously the connectors give us the reach to be able to connect clients, applications, and line of business systems within our firewall as well as outside of it in a SaaS type implementation here. So here we can connect now. On the left-hand side, you may see some IBM connections, Dropbox, and so the connectors really allow you to get that reach into those different applications. Maybe it's Salesforce, NetSuite, ERP systems, and then on the right side is more the Azure services side, cognitive services, site recovery, Azure functions, Azure SQL database, and so it's really just bringing all this together in what we call the hybrid integration platform. And speaking of outreach and connecting, going from BizTalk to its connectors today, which, outside of the SQL Server, it's really based on the WCF framework for the most part. These connectors in Azure that are offered out there as a service are more specific connectivity connectors for that specific platform. So you'll see things like Dynamics, Google Drive, Smartsheet, Salesforce, Power BI, Pinterest. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, with over 100 connectors, we can start to see how the hybrid solution for connecting all those different cloud-based applications starts to make, a lot of sense for the hybrid scenario. Okay, so let's peel back that marketing speak just a little bit and start to dive into this a bit more deeper here. So hybrid, integration platform, what does that really mean? Well, it's just that. It's a hybrid of a cloud integration application or a set of services, as well as leveraging your on-premise or the line of business applications within your firewall. And so it's really extending out your enterprise out to the cloud. You can see on the bottom right where this is a typical hub-spoke or maybe an ESB implementation of BizTalk Server. You know, it may be integrating SAP, PeopleSoft, Oracle. Maybe it's integrating a claims management system like QNext, TriZetto QNext, Diamond. But it sits in the middle of these as an ESB or a hub-spoke type pattern, and it's really connecting all your applications within. Now, there is some B2B capabilities within BizTalk. Where we start to really extend this, though, is where now the logic apps starts to become a spoke off of that. So you can think of logic apps as an extension or a spoke off of that hub, where now you can, it's more amenable to connecting to SaaS applications. So if you have to connect to NetSuite, Salesforce, Logic Apps is going to be the way to do that. But maybe also you want to leverage some of the other things in Azure, API management. You want to essentially expose your data as an endpoint. Service bus, and we're going to talk more about that. Cognitive services is we're getting a lot of traction on this, and we actually we have a dedicated practice around this. In fact, there's an upcoming webinar around the cognitive services as well, so we're super excited about where this is going. But integration can play sort of a role with all this, and I think enterprises that embrace integration are going to benefit and break away from those typically applications that are siloed or those integrations that are siloed. And that's going to give, you know, better response time to customers. It's going to give you more agility. It's going to give you all those different things that we expect from a modernized integration platform in 2017. As Internet of Things, mobile development, all of those initiatives come up, integration can be a big part of that. So Microsoft's approach to this is, and there's some different areas here, but I really pulled together some key ones where I'm seeing traction and I kind of see the future. There's API management, and this is super interesting for me because, you know, in the BizTalk world, if we wanted to expose a service as an endpoint, you could either expose that, host it on IaaS, and then you would have to do some type of you would have to expose that service somehow outside of your organization or within your organization. But it was typically a bottom-up sort of build out. So you would have to build out the schemas and the orchestrations, and you would expose them as services. This is a little bit different paradigm where this is more API-led integration, where maybe you have to work with the mobile team, maybe you have to work with the web or the e-commerce team to start to build those contracts in the beginning so they can start to do their development, or the consumers can start working on it. If you're exposing something out to CRM, you know, the consumers can start working with that API. Where in the past it was more bottom up. You know, we would do all of the integration and then expose it as a service. This is a little bit different. This is saying, okay, now I want an API that's hosted out on Azure. We'll figure out how to connect everything as a subsequent process. But API management really provides you just turnkey solution, expose your, you know, maybe you're a healthcare client, you want to expose member data, you know, but you have to comply to you know, you have the HIPAA compliance issues. So, you know, you need the security. You need to expose that as an endpoint as opposed to direct to your member data. So that's a use case. Maybe it's a purchase order. Maybe it's a policy in the insurance industry. So it's a way to essentially expose your data as an endpoint. It has the security, it has the throttling, the logging, everything you would expect out of a enterprise level API management solution. We talked about Logic Apps. This is really connecting SaaS applications. So if you already have BizTalk, what's really cool also though is your schemas, your maps can actually be ported to Logic Apps. So they'll actually work in Logic Apps. And then you would model that flow similar to an orchestration within the Logic Apps application. So you can think of Logic Apps as almost like a web version of the orchestration. Where we see the best usage right now is, again, extending your BizTalk application. If you need to connect to SaaS applications, those CRM, Salesforce, NetSuite applications, Logic Apps is a great way to do that. BizTalk Server still has a role and will always have a role in integration because there's nothing that can compete with its mission critical processing. When you're processing, even heavy loads or light loads, but when it's mission critical processing and you walk over there and you unplug the server and you can plug that server back up and resume all your instances, that is a very powerful asset for a company. And the durable messaging aspect of BizTalk is just one of the enterprise level integration benefits, but that's one that I like to typically use here. High availability, capabilities, high throughput. It's really the powerhouse for EAI integrations. Service Bus, and I'm going to dig into this one later in the deck. This is Azure Service Bus. Very exciting about this. I'm going to cover 3 different Service Bus components: technologies, queues, topics, and relays. There's some other ones out there, Event Hub and so forth. But those are the 3 that I'm going to cover in this webcast. And this is really about cloud-based messaging. You can take some of the patterns, for example, that's required in BizTalk and host them out on the Azure data center. Maybe you need across multiple data centers. Maybe you need to have a load level pattern that you need to implement. So there's all kinds of different reasons, and we'll discuss those in more detail here later in the deck. So this really rounds out sort of the enterprise integration and all the different areas that we can use. So I touched on Logic Apps a little bit. You can think of Logic Apps as really workflows that visually, it's really a intuitive tool. So you can literally log on to the Azure portal and start to model workflows, integrations without, the difference in that and BizTalk is with BizTalk, you first have to set up a server, right? And you need a specialized skill set typically to do that correct, especially if it's a high availability scenario. So you need to set up a BizTalk server, you got to configure the BizTalk server, and then you start building your application in Visual Studio, you'll deploy it, and so there's definitely you're managing quite a bit more in the BizTalk world. In the Logic Apps world, Microsoft really manages everything except for the application. You're managing the application, you're modeling your flow. It handles load balancing, it handles high throughput scenarios, it automatically will grow with your capacity needs. And so this is super cool stuff, great, and it's much more amenable, again, when you're connecting to SaaS type applications. So that's some of the things that are new, some of the things that are new from Microsoft, relatively new. Service Bus has been around. I think I've been talking about that since 2012, but it's really getting some traction here in the past year and a half. So I think, and Logic Apps is at a maturity level now where, we're we're definitely starting to see some traction there, so it's super exciting on that end. This next area is around, again, back to the challenges. This is some of the challenges that the platform provides, or you have to live with, and this is some of the add-ons, the tools, and the frameworks that's going to make your life a little easier, hopefully. It'll make your life easier in terms of integration. I can't help you with anything else, but I think I can help you with integration. So when we talk about the different tools and applications, there's actually quite a few out there. BizTalk has been around a long time. It's got a significant community, a set of MVPs who are always evangelizing, and there's Integration Monday. It's hosted out of the UK. I mean, there's a lot of energy around BizTalk still to this day. A lot of it's starting to get into the Azure space as well, which is really awesome. Because I think, it used to be that integration was really about BizTalk, and it was very monolithic in nature. Now integration, I think, is breaking the walls of just integrators, right? You're doing API management, and maybe you're building a website and you need to do some type of business rules. Because of the microservices technology, you can actually call the BRE from your web service. It doesn't really require that you utilize BizTalk. So the microservices architecture, the technologies that are coming through are really exciting. So the tools here, I think, will improve, enhance, and automate. If you're not using these, then and the services, I invite you to take a little bit deeper look at it. The one I'll cover on this screen, I actually dive into BizTalk 360, QuickLearn, and Talon's T-Connect EDI Accelerator a little bit in a few slides here. The BizTalk deployment framework on this slide I'd like to cover. If you're not using BizTalk 360, or I'm sorry, BizTalk deployment framework, that's definitely something you should take a look at. It does require quite a bit of setup in the beginning. Once you have it set up, it just makes your life so much easier. And this is really about automating deployments, managing your bindings file between your different landscapes, whether it's development and production and everything in between. That could be staging, UAT, test. So typically, without some type of automated deployment framework, you would have to manage all those bindings throughout the life cycle of the deployment. So this will really make your life a lot easier. It's not that bad to work with, and once you get it set up, it's really a dream, I think. So I'm a big proponent of this. Next area is BizTalk 360, and the challenges that this really addresses are around lack of monitoring and notification, within the platform. I think there's also a lack of productivity tools within BizTalk. There's a problem with security, and there's very little auditing. So, for example, if you stop a receive port or if you stop a host instance, there's really no audit trail of that, and that could be a very critical process. What stopped the application, for example? So security and auditing, I think, is a challenge with the platform. I think a lack of productivity tools is the monitoring and notification is even though if you have an enterprise level monitoring solution like SCOM, you're still going to need something like BizTalk 360 that's more of a niche monitoring application. It's going to tell you when throttling is occurring. It's going to tell you, if you expect a message between this time and it's a very critical message, it'll give you that proactive alert. This is really going to make your life a lot easier in the BizTalk world. So some of the features, when we talk about BizTalk 360, it's normally a monitoring and alerting feature discussion, which is, this is a big area. But another area BizTalk 360, I think, does very well is around the operations. And so, for example, let's say like some of our larger enterprise level clients, they may have 7 or 8 application servers. If there's an error and you have to sort of hunt that error down in the event log, in the event viewer, you may have to log into each server, for example. The BizTalk 360 actually gives you a single pane into all those different functionalities. So you'll be able to see across all 8 application servers. You'll be able to see sort of a one view of that, a single pane, essentially view of that. So it does that in each one of these functions here: EDI data management, BAM portal, message box viewer. It kind of, a lot of this, it wraps the existing functionality of BizTalk, but it provides you it in a one single pane, which is, and the user interface is much better. And then finally, analytical features. This is another one that I think is pretty interesting because, you know, maybe I have some high throughput scenarios. We have, every now and then we get a warning about throttling, for example. There's a throttling analyzer, for example. And so all kinds of different dashboards that I think will really make your team a lot more productive and make your life easier. So another area, we talked about the challenge of skill sets are hard to come by. You know, at Talon, we have a dedicated practice. We invest in building, you know, our talent. And so one of the companies I think that's been in this business a while, they do it very well. We use them, and a lot of our clients do as well. QuickLearn training, classroom-based training, whether it's on-site or off-site. And especially if you partner with Talon around this as well, like they could give you the classroom training. We also have some offerings where we can help, you know, mentor, whiteboard sessions, shoulder-to-shoulder peer reviews, all those different things to really invest in your people and really, you know, help you become more productive. The product is very specialized. So this is a pain point we've seen across a lot of our clients. It's not a position that you can fill very well and very especially not quickly. Grow your own works, and with the right, I think with the right candidate, and we can obviously help assess that as well. So some of the Talon BizTalk offerings, how we're helping clients, is kind of the next area. And because I think most of you on this webcast probably already has BizTalk, I'm just going to highlight 2 or 3 here. The first one is ongoing support services. So you can think of Talon as, for example, your safety net. If you need support, ongoing support services, we have a support plan. It's based on tiers, SLAs, based on what kind of SLA you expect. And so the ongoing support services is really your warranty, if you will. So we're happy to talk to you. You know, the developers and architects, their time is spent better developing new feeds and not in sort of a support mode. We've got a whole team here at Talon 24/7, and we can actually leverage the BizTalk 360 monitoring for more managed support offering as well. So this is an area that we can certainly help you sleep at night, you know, and let Talon sort of take care of some of the things that come up during the day. Another area, best practice and performance tuning assessments. So I always say, you know, in BizTalk, it's a very powerful and flexible platform, but there's about 50 ways of doing something with BizTalk, always, right? Because it's so flexible, but there's only 2 ways that you probably should do it. So although there's all kinds of different ways to implement an integration, there's probably only 2 ways. So I think what we've seen is whether it's, inexperienced or they were rushed, there's a lot of, integrations that are implemented that's probably not best practice. And even if it's not best practice, it's just not the right pattern for what's happening, right? So, do you do sequential convoys? Do you split it into orchestration? Do you split it up front, aggregate? So there's just all these different integration patterns that you can apply. And integration and software patterns is nothing new. It's been around for 30 years, and BizTalk is no different. We don't invent patterns. We just look at the problem and then we apply the right pattern to it. And so we can help with any kind of course correction, whether it's an assessment and just a report that kind of gives you and outlines it, as well as we can remediate some things for you. Mentoring and training, I mentioned QuickLearn. We can also be involved with that as well. We can help identify the candidate resources for this, and we can also do shoulder to shoulder. I always say when we do implementations of BizTalk, especially for new customers and clients, that we don't consider the project to be successful unless our clients can support it on an ongoing basis. Of course, if they choose to do that. So this is an area where we feel like is a big differentiator we can help you with. Installations and platform configurations. Now, obviously, new installs and platform configurations, we've been doing this for many years. Migrations, especially with the end of life of BizTalk 2009, this has been a really hot area for us. We've been doing a lot of upgrades and migrations. In fact, we have sort of a micro team that's been, we've been doing so many of these. So we kind of got the patterns down. And, some companies are a little, they may be a little afraid of doing that upgrade just because, if I unplug this, what's going to happen to my mission critical business processes. Talon can come in, help you sort of build that roadmap, and then, you can try to figure out where your next steps are. Okay, so that's our professional services, if you will, offering. We also have a EDI component, what's called a T-Connect HIPAA accelerator. It also works with non-HIPAA EDI as well, so supply chains, purchase orders, invoices, any type of EDI that's out there, this will work for that. BizTalk, I see BizTalk, it does a lot of things. I don't think BizTalk does EDI especially well, and that's really where we've sort of developed sort of a bridge for that chasm, if you will. I think you start to hit a lot of walls, especially in the HIPAA, and in terms of companies like payers and health plans who have to process a lot of claims, encounters, enrollments, and then on the supply chain, retail, warehouse management, transportation management, there's obviously walls that they start to hit with that as well too in terms of rules and validation. So what we did was we have what we call our T-Connect accelerator for BizTalk. It plugs right into BizTalk very quickly, and it's really implemented as a pipeline component. So you can literally just plug it into your receive port for your EDI. What's interesting is it uses our own EDI parser, so we don't use the Microsoft's EDI parsing. We use our own parser component, and this is actually, we feel like this is actually this is different than anything that's done out in the industry. So we're super excited about the parsing engine of this. We can take that EDI, ANSI, stream, and the way we parse it is the output is an object model. So instead of going from ANSI EDI to this big bloated XML, you can work with C# now against that object model, which makes it great if you want to start doing policy and rules on that EDI message. So if you want to gate your rules and management in the beginning of the process, you could essentially write .NET code against the objects to be able to reject or whatever you want to do with that rule. What's really cool is it actually plugs into the standard 999 or 277 CA acknowledgments as well. So it can plug right in, and so the outcome of that policy is actually included in the standard 999 with BizTalk. And then finally, one of the pain points I think with EDI is in BizTalk it's typically very transient data. And a lot of EDI transaction sets, our clients, our customers, I think expect a little bit more state. And so one thing we've done is, as it's passing through this, we actually save it into a database. Now, we spent many, thousands of hours. This is a very, we figured out the right level of normalization. We have some very interesting ways of getting the data in and out with APIs. So persisting it into a database, I think, is another really cool piece of this. And it's really just plugging in a T-Connect BizTalk pipeline component, which is really cool. So once that EDI comes through, now you can use some of the other things that we have, dashboards, reports, portal. So now brings me to my other challenge with EDI is visibility, lack of transparency. How do I, get, we have a portal, for example, where you can actually manage the state of EDI, resubmit it. So then you can start to interact with EDI, I think, the way it should be. So for those of you that are doing EDI, hopefully that some of those things kind of resonate for you there. And this is just a simple BizTalk pipeline component with some databases, and of course the Power BI dashboards and all that sort of optional. Okay, I think at this point in the webcast, I wanted to talk about BizTalk Server. There's always a question of what's the future of BizTalk. BizTalk is going to be around. I said that. I still believe that. There's no indication that BizTalk is going anywhere. You will see Microsoft innovate with cloud-first technology. So it's going to be innovating on Azure, and then those innovations will work their way to BizTalk. I think that's the way you will see it. But again, mission-critical business processes, message brokering, complex integration patterns. When we're talking about EAI, BizTalk does this super well. And it also now with 2016, it's more amenable to extending to the cloud for that hybrid scenario that we were talking about earlier. So why BizTalk 2016 if you run in 2013, if you run in 2009, 10, whatever it is? One of the biggest things is platform support. Obviously, to be able to get up to the newest Windows Server, SQL Server, Visual Studio, and Office. Now, I thought Microsoft was going to come out with Visual Studio 2016 at the same release, and that would have made my job much easier because for once in my life, the versions would have been aligned. So the stars were aligned, and now we get 2016 across the board. Visual Studio is an anomaly now. Well, that's okay. Another big thing is SQL Server 2016 always on. Now, previously, BizTalk 2013 R2 and prior didn't support the always on availability groups in SQL Server. And that's primarily because of the MSDTC, the Distributed Transaction Coordinator, and that's really how it sort of distributes the transactions across the database and multiple server applications. So that was really the big thing. Now with 2016, it's supported, which works perfectly now with hosting BizTalk Server and infrastructure as a service in Azure, because now you can run high availability scenarios. You can run a 2+2, in other words, 2 application servers and 2 SQL servers in Azure Infrastructure as a Service now because of the always-on capabilities. Previously, Azure, or still, Azure really doesn't support clustered services. So if you had to run SQL Server in a clustered mode, that really wasn't supported without some type of third-party clustering tool. Also, Logic Apps Adapter, it also has Service Bus Adapter, so it's really extending it out in that hybrid nature again. So the final area that we'll talk about is Azure Service Bus. So really the basics of a queue is, queues really haven't changed over the years. This is just a queue hosted out on Azure, but what's really cool is the underlying technology of this is actually a blob storage. So there is a sense of a durable messaging component, which is very similar to what BizTalk does, right? The durable messaging is a big part. Now, the usage pattern for queues is really about load handling, right? Load handling and load balancing between the consumers and the senders, right? So the senders can just send all the messages they want. It goes onto the queue, and the receivers, as they see fit, can pop the messages off the queue, typically first in, first out. So very interesting pattern here. This is hosted on Azure. It can be hosted in multiple data centers. The other thing that's not widely known or is not widely talked about is, typically you think of a queue as asynchronous, and it is, but there are some ways to use the Service Bus queue synchronously. There's a concept within the Service Bus framework where you can do a transaction ID, and so it's, you can essentially send out start a transaction. The sender can send a message, and then you can wait on the outbound queue to get that response back. So it's kind of like a pseudo synchronous pattern, but it's still asynchronous. So just kind of going through the flow, a sender would send a message to the queue, acknowledgement is returned, the receiver connects to a queue and receives an act complete, and that's how queues work. Topics and subscriptions. A topic is essentially, you can send a message to a topic just like a queue. What's interesting about a topic is, unlike a queue, you can have multiple subscribers of the same message. So you could subscribe to all the orders. I could subscribe as a subscriber to all the quotes. And then we can sort of share that we can consume the same messages. And it's very similar to BizTalk's message box if you think about it. You can publish a message to the message box. Under the hood of the message box, there's these listeners that are saying, hey, we've got a message in, is there a subscriber? It could be one or more orchestrations. It could be a send port. So very same paradigm, actually. Probably the only difference is that in BizTalk, if you submit a message, you have to have a subscription. So, and the final piece of this, and this is sort of getting to the end here, is relays. A Service Bus relay, in the past we've had to use, if we wanted to expose a service internally, that means within our enterprise, within our DMZ, we really only had three options, and those were using or putting BizTalk in the DMZ, which we would, in the perimeter network, which we would never do. We would never put our name on that one. There's option two, maybe write some type of facade services, some type of facade pattern, but that's very complicated, and that gives you a couple more, performance hits as well. And option number three, which is typically what we've been doing over the years, is a proxy server, some type of reverse proxy where you have a hardened server setting in your perimeter network, and it's sort of delegating those requests coming in from that endpoint, routing it to your BizTalk service. So that's typically how we did it with Service Bus Relay. This is really cool. when you set up service bus relay, it actually establishes an outbound connection on a 443 port. So it's outbound. It's a 443, which is a secure port. And essentially what it does is it sets up a bidirectional port that's listening once the port's open. So you host an endpoint out on service bus, and then that service bus endpoint for the relay will actually just route that request right into your BizTalk service or your IIS service. So it doesn't have to be BizTalk service. It can be just a regular web service or REST service hosted in IIS, or some type of WCF service. So that's relays. Super excited about that. So let's just kind of recap here. I showed a slide with some of the challenges we wanted to address. I wanted to recap, talk about some of the things from our perspective, us being Talon. Challenge number one: specialized skill sets, resources, and limited support. It's a big challenge. Leverage someone like QuickLearn, Talon mentoring some of our services around that. We also have a support offering that we could help help with that as well. So we've seen this work really well in this scenario. Number two, modernize integration requirements. Today's Internet of Things, are very siloed integration patterns. We've got to be more microservice centric. We've got to be more capable of more high volume, event driven, distributed services. And so it's a different landscape than it was even 2 years ago. And I think cognitive services also is going to be very interesting in Azure services. API management, and all that sort of combined with the capabilities of BizTalk, I think is a real interesting, there's some real interesting architectural patterns here. And then finally, platform gaps. We talked about monitoring and alerting. BizTalk 360 is a great product for that. EDI vertical specializations, Talon's T-Connect BizTalk Accelerator will help you with any kind of EDI woes. And I know they're out there. Visual Studio, Team Foundation Server, BizUnit, BizTalk Deployment Framework are all the tools that are out there that can really make your ALM, your developers, you can automate it, you can help your regression testing and everything else. So that's kind of summing up the challenges and solutions. The final really slide here is just a recap of how we can help, with those challenges and provide, as maybe a call to action if any of you guys are interested in this. The first is, if you're running 2009 BizTalk or 2010 and you call Microsoft for support, they're going to probably say, call me back when you've upgraded. Well, just call Talon. We'll set you up with one of our support packages here, and then we'll help you build that roadmap to getting to the next version. BizTalk Enhanced Managed Support. Again, this is your warranty with BizTalk. This is, you can think of this as the support offering with many different SLAs. So we can help you with the support of the ongoing support, and let your dev and architects, really focus on the mission critical business drivers. BizTalk upgrades and migrations. Bring in our specialists. We're doing this every day. Bring us in. We can help do assessments. We can help you plan out that migration package. Maybe it's just a short envisioning to kind of lay out that roadmap for you. And then finally, Azure Infrastructure as a Service, Integration Platform as a Service. If you want to dip your toe in the cloud water, so to speak, we can help you with a short envisioning, maybe do some type of strategy session and help you prepare for sort of the modernized 2017 integration patterns that we're seeing. So that really concludes everything that I wanted to cover. I covered quite a bit here. My goal was really just to sort of pique your interest, give you a little bit of perspective of what we've seen. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I encourage you to do a little bit more deep diving into some of these areas, and obviously we can help you with that as well. Just email us at biztalk@talon.com, and then I have a couple links here. One is our T-Connect accelerator for EDI, and then the other link we have here is our practice site as well. So thanks everyone. I really appreciate your time today. Looking forward to, I know some of you are our customers, looking forward to more happy work with you, and for some of you that are new to this, look forward to an ongoing relationship, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you, and have a great day.